At 11:23 a.m., August 1941, over the gray churn of the English Channel, the cockpit shook as the Spitfire slammed into a climbing turn. The horizon tipped, clouds smeared into white arcs. The G-force climbed past 4, then 5. Any other pilot would have been seconds from blackout. This one leaned harder. The paradox was absolute and lethal. The man pulling the tightest turn in the sky had no legs. Below him, 2 Messerschmitt Bf-109s tried to follow. Their noses lagged, their wings shuddered. One pilot's vision tunneled to black. The other loosened his grip without realizing it. Their aircraft drifted wide, helpless, slipping down and away like stunned fish. Inside the Spitfire, Douglas Bader stayed awake. No gray veil, no loss of control, no warning flicker at the edge of sight, just clarity. The gun sight slid forward. The lead German filled the ring. A short burst, not sprayed, not wasted. Cannon shells stitched the wing root. Metal tore. Fuel mist ignited. The Messerschmitt rolled, then fell, trailing flame into the sea. Bader didn't watch it hit. He was already hauling the stick again. The absurd truth hung in the cockpit like cordite smoke. The thing that should have grounded him forever was keeping him conscious while enemy pilots blacked out. The Spitfire creaked as the turn tightened. 6 Gs. The straps bit into his shoulders. His prosthetic legs, locked into place, felt nothing at all. No blood pooling, no pressure drop, no mercy. Behind him, the second German tried to break off. Too late. His vision failed before his judgment did. The aircraft snapped into a shallow dive, uncontrolled. Another burst, another hit. 2 kills in under 30 seconds. And somewhere in the German formation, radios crackled with confusion. Reports collided. Der Engländer dreht zu eng. The Englishman turns too tight. Unmöglich. Impossible. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know that the pilot who shouldn't have been in the air had found a physiological loophole in gravity itself. The Spitfire leveled out. Bader exhaled once. Calm. Measured. As if this were routine. But the sky wasn't done with him yet. More dots appeared against the sun, and the countdown began. The Spitfire leveled out. Bader exhaled once. Calm. Measured. As if this were routine. But the sky wasn't done with him yet. More dots appeared against the sun, and the countdown began. They came in staggered pairs descending from altitude. 4, then 6, then more. Black crosses sliding out of the glare like knives pulled from light. The radio erupted with clipped call signs, broken by static and urgency. Squadron voices tried to form a picture faster than the sky allowed. Bader didn't answer. He pushed the throttle forward until the Merlin screamed, then rolled left, deliberately exposing his flank. A mistake if he were anyone else. The Germans took the bait instantly. 2 Messerschmitts peeled off, diving hard, confident. They had altitude. They had speed. And they believed the crippled RAF Ace below them would break first. They were wrong on every count. The first attacker fired too early. Tracers passed wide. Bader waited, not for distance, but for time. He let the enemy close until the cockpit vibrated from prop wash, until the German pilot's face was visible behind the canopy glass. Then Bader yanked the stick back. The G-force slammed on like a door. 5, 6. The Spitfire howled in protest. The German tried to follow, trained instinct fighting biology. His aircraft shuddered. His vision collapsed inward. He never finished the turn. Bader rolled over the top of him and fired down. The Messerschmitt broke apart mid-air, fragments spinning through cloud like thrown tools. No pause, no celebration. The second attacker overshot, fast and blind. Bader kicked rudder, slipped sideways, and climbed again, a move that made no sense on paper. His Spitfire bled speed, but gained angle. The German pilot tried to match it, and paid the same price as the first. His body quit before his machine did. Blackout. The aircraft wandered. Another short burst. Below, the channel swallowed wreckage without ceremony. But now the remaining Germans had seen enough. They didn't dive in recklessly anymore. They circled, spread out, tried to force a traditional fight. Energy tactics, vertical separation, patience. Bader understood the shift immediately. He was outnumbered. His fuel gauge crept downward. Ammunition counters ticked toward 0. This wasn't a duel anymore. It was a calculation. He checked the sun. Adjusted his heading by degrees, not miles. Each movement was economical, precise. A man flying as if time itself were limited. Another German tried a high-speed slashing attack. Bader half-rolled, tightened into yet another impossible turn. The Spitfire groaned. The German pilot didn't black out this time. He felt it coming and broke off early, terrified of the edge. That hesitation was enough. Bader climbed into the opening he'd created, guns hammering. The Messerschmitt limped away, trailing smoke, alive but finished. Now the radio chatter changed tone. Less confidence, more disbelief. Reports filtered back to the Luftwaffe formation leader. Bleibt wach. Immer. He stays conscious. Always. They didn't know why. They only knew that every time they pulled harder, they lost the fight inside their own bodies first. Bader glanced at the fuel gauge again. The numbers were no longer friendly. One more mistake would be fatal. And the Germans were learning. The clock was tightening. The clock was tightening. One more mistake would be fatal. And the Germans were learning. The memory came uninvited, sharp as cold air. Not the crash itself, that arrived later, but the moment before it, years earlier, when the sky had still been his alone. Woodley Aerodrome, peacetime. Carelessness disguised as confidence. Douglas Bader had always flown like he couldn't imagine consequence. Low passes, unauthorized aerobatics, a need to prove something even no one had asked him to prove. The Air Force tolerated it because he was gifted, because talent often arrived hand in hand with recklessness. On that day, he pushed it too far. The aircraft stalled low. There was no room to recover. Metal met ground in a violence so complete it erased sound itself. When awareness returned, it was to pain that did not scream. It waited. Both legs shattered. Infection followed. Surgeons worked fast, then faster. Decisions were made without ceremony. Both legs amputated, one above the knee, one below. The sky, it seemed, had collected its debt. They told him it was over, not cruelly, clinically. A pilot without legs was not a pilot at all. No rudder control, no endurance, no future in the air. The RAF wrote him off with quiet efficiency, as institutions always do. Bader didn't argue. He simply refused to accept the verdict. Rehabilitation became combat. Learning to walk again on crude metal and leather prosthetics that chafed, slipped, bruised. Pain wasn't the worst part. The worst part was being watched. Instructors, doctors, officers waiting for him to fail, waiting for reality to assert itself. He didn't give it the satisfaction. He learned to lock the artificial legs into place, learned pressure points, learned balance without instinct. When he fell, he got up without comment. When told something was impossible, he treated it as irrelevant data. Flying came back slowly, against policy, against sense. Short hops at first, gentle turns. The aircraft felt different now, more remote, more honest. There was no room for sloppiness anymore. Then something unexpected emerged. Under higher G-forces, where other pilots struggled, Bader noticed clarity. No sudden dimming, no crushing weight dragging consciousness downward. While others strained, he remained alert. Doctors would later explain it in blood pressure charts and physiology diagrams. Less blood mass below the heart. No legs to drain circulation during extreme maneuvers. At the time, Bader didn't care why. He only knew it worked. By the time war came, the RAF needed pilots badly enough to ignore precedent. They gave him a Spitfire and expected limits. They didn't understand they'd removed one. Back in the present, the channel glimmered beneath his wings. The memory faded as quickly as it had arrived. Ahead, the Germans regrouped again, this time smarter, wider, patient. Bader rolled his shoulders once, settling into the harness. What had once ended his career had quietly rewritten the rules of the fight, and now the enemy was about to test them one more time. What had once ended his career had quietly rewritten the rules of the fight, and now the enemy was about to test them one more time. Bader had never fit the mold, even before the accident. He was abrasive where others were polite, certain where others hedged. In the mess, he drank too much, spoke too loudly, laughed at the wrong moments. Authority tolerated him because the numbers did not lie. In the air, he was ruthless, disciplined, precise. The crash didn't soften him, it sharpened him. Where other pilots carried fear, of injury, of death, of disgrace, Bader carried something colder, finality. He had already lost what everyone else was afraid of losing. The ground had taken his legs. There was nothing left for the sky to threaten him with. That absence changed how he flew. He did not hoard altitude for safety. He spent it. He did not disengage early. He pressed until the enemy broke first. Risk calculations that paralyzed others became irrelevant. His margin was not physical comfort. It was control. In training, instructors noticed it immediately. He pulled tighter turns without flinching, stayed conscious when others grayed out. He didn't boast about it. He simply used it. Word spread quietly, not officially. Pilots talked. German pilots later would too. Some Luftwaffe reports described an RAF ace who ignored human limits. Others speculated about drugs, experimental equipment, modified aircraft. The truth, that his body no longer followed the same rules, never crossed their minds. Bader also understood something else that others missed. The enemy didn't know what he couldn't do. They assumed every pilot fought the same invisible enemy inside the cockpit. Blood draining downward, vision narrowing, judgment slipping away under G. They assumed that if they pushed harder, everyone would eventually blink. Bader never blinked. That made him dangerous in a way no modification or training could replicate. Not stronger, not faster, different. He learned to exploit it deliberately. Tight vertical scissors, sustained turns where German pilots had to choose between breaking off or blacking out. He turned biology into a weapon, one the enemy could not see and could not counter. Back in the Channel sky, the Luftwaffe formation committed to a new approach. They climbed together, slow and deliberate, trying to draw him up into thin air where oxygen and gravity would work in their favor. Bader followed, not impulsively, calculated. He watched spacing, counted aircraft, gauged angles. He let them believe the plan was working. Altitude climbed, air thinned, the Spitfire's engine strained. Then, without warning, Bader rolled inverted and dove through the formation. The move was violent, illogical, and perfectly timed. Two Germans tried to follow him down. Their bodies rebelled. One overshot wildly. The other never recovered. Bader leveled out low, alone again, fuel now critically low. He checked his instruments once more. The fight was nearing its end, one way or another. And the sky felt suddenly very small. The fight was nearing its end, one way or another. And the sky felt suddenly very small. Fuel warning flickered once, then stayed dark. The quiet kind of warning that didn't shout, only counted. Bader knew exactly how much time remained. Minutes, not many. Enough for one more engagement, not enough for mistakes. The Germans sensed it too. They stopped chasing, stopped diving. Instead, they spread out again, wide arcs cutting across the sky like closing jaws. No heroics now, no panic, just geometry. Altitude on one side, speed on the other, waiting for the crippled English ace to choose wrong. Bader didn't rush the decision. He flew straight for several long seconds, an eternity in combat, letting the enemy wonder if he'd finally misjudged. The Channel slid beneath his wings. Sunlight flashed across the canopy. His breathing stayed even, measured. Then he rolled hard right and climbed. The maneuver looked suicidal. Straight into thinner air, straight into the waiting Germans above. But it forced a response. Two Messerschmitts broke early to intercept, unable to ignore the opening. Bader pulled. The G-force rose again, smooth and crushing. The aircraft protested. His vision stayed razor-sharp. He felt the limits of the machine, not his body. One German hesitated, just a fraction, knowing what had happened to others who followed too tightly. That hesitation killed him. Bader cut across his path and fired. The Messerschmitt pitched violently and disappeared into cloud, smoking. The second German stayed disciplined. He broke off early, conserving consciousness, conserving life. That left one more. The formation leader. He came in from behind, fast, precise, refusing to turn. He fired in short, disciplined bursts, forcing Bader lower, burning altitude Bader could not afford to lose. The Spitfire shuddered as rounds tore past the cockpit. One hit the fuselage, another clipped a control cable. The aircraft answered sluggishly now, wounded. Bader didn't look back. He leveled out just above the waves, the Channel rushing close enough to touch. The German followed, confident now. No turns, no tricks, just speed and pressure. This was where most pilots died. Bader waited until the very last second. Then he pulled straight up. Not into a loop, not into a roll. A brutal vertical climb that forced the German to choose, follow and black out, or break and lose position. The German followed. For 3 seconds it worked. Then gravity collected its payment. The Messerschmitt wavered, nose drifting, pilot unconscious before he could react. The aircraft rolled inverted, falling helplessly. Bader fired once. The burst was enough. Silence returned to the sky. No cheers, no radio calls, Just the steady drone of a damaged engine and the ticking of a fuel gauge now nearly empty. Bader turned for home. Behind him, the channel closed over the evidence, leaving only unanswered questions drifting back toward occupied Europe. And somewhere in a German briefing room, pilots would report the same impossible detail again. He stayed awake. Silence returned to the sky. No cheers, no radio calls. Just the steady drone of a damaged engine and the ticking of a fuel gauge now nearly empty. Bader turned for home. The coast of England appeared as a thin gray line, distant and unreal. Safety, in theory, not yet in practice. Bader knew the most dangerous moment wasn't the fight, it was after the fight. When attention slipped, when fuel ran low, when wounded aircraft betrayed their pilots without warning. He scanned the sky methodically. High, low, sunward, down, sun. Nothing immediate. That didn't mean nothing was coming. He eased the throttle back, coaxing the Merlin rather than demanding from it. Every movement was deliberate now. No wasted climb, no unnecessary bank. He flew as if counting coins from an empty pocket. The plan wasn't written, it never was. It was a sequence of contingencies layered in his head. If intercepted, turn toward the sun. If chased, force vertical. If hit again, ditch close to shore. He rehearsed each outcome without emotion. Preparedness had replaced hope. The fuel needle crept lower. Radio crackled again. Friendly voices this time, strained but steady. Reports of Luftwaffe elements still active inland, warnings to stay alert. Bader acknowledged once, short, flat. He adjusted course slightly, skirting the edge of known patrol zones. He didn't trust patterns, not his own, not the enemy's. Predictability was the first step toward being caught. Then the engine coughed, once sharp, honest. Bader didn't react outwardly. Inside, the clock accelerated. He reduced power further, trading speed for endurance. The Spitfire descended gradually, losing options with every foot. Below, the sea darkened, textured by wind. A single dot appeared off his left wing, too steady to be imagination. Another Messerschmitt. Late, hungry, probably alone. Bader didn't turn to face him. Not yet. He let the German close, allowed the illusion of advantage to grow. The Spitfire looked wounded, slower, running. The German committed. Only then did Bader act. He didn't climb hard, didn't pull tight. He executed a shallow, climbing turn, just enough to invite pursuit without triggering immediate blackout. The German followed cautiously, aware now of the stories, of the rumors. Bader counted silently. 1, 2, 3. At the edge of tolerance, he snapped into a tighter pull, forcing the German to choose again. The Messerschmitt wobbled. The pilot reacted late, but not fatally. He broke away, refusing the trap. Smart. Too smart. Bader didn't chase. He couldn't. Fuel was nearly gone. Instead, he leveled out and flew straight, a calculated insult. The German stayed back, uncertain. He had the advantage now. Altitude, fuel, options. But he also had doubt. And doubt in air combat was heavier than armor. Bader crossed the coastline at low altitude, engine sputtering. The German didn't follow. Perhaps orders. Perhaps fear. Perhaps instinct. Bader didn't care. The Spitfire staggered toward the airfield, barely alive, landing gear slamming down harder than intended. The engine died as the wheels touched ground. Perfect timing. As ground crews ran toward the aircraft, Bader sat still for a moment, hands resting on the controls. He had turned loss into leverage, time into a weapon. And tomorrow the sky would ask again. He had turned loss into leverage, time into a weapon. And tomorrow the sky would ask again. Tomorrow came faster than expected. Before dawn had fully burned the mist off the airfield, engines were already coughing to life. Briefings were short, stripped of drama, routes, altitudes, known enemy concentrations, no speeches, no promises. Everyone in the room understood the arithmetic. More sorties meant fewer names on the board by week's end. Bader listened without comment. He didn't dwell on yesterday's fight. He never did. Survival was not proof of mastery. It was only permission to try again. By mid-morning he was airborne once more, climbing through broken cloud. The channel was quieter today, deceptive in its calm. That never meant safety. It meant the enemy was thinking. At altitude the temperature dropped sharply. The cockpit glass rhymed at the edges. Bader flexed his shoulders once, settling into the harness, checking pressure, instruments, spacing. His artificial legs were locked in place, unyielding, silent. The radio crackled. Enemy contact, multiple aircraft, high. The clock started again. Bader climbed with the formation this time, not alone. Spitfires spread out, disciplined, alert. The Germans appeared as dark marks against the pale sky, holding altitude, refusing to descend. Neither side rushed. This was the dangerous kind of fight, the one where everyone knew what the other could do. Bader counted fuel unconsciously, counted distance, counted angles. Each second narrowed the space in which a decision could be made. A German broke formation suddenly, diving through the RAF line. Chaos rippled outward. Shouts filled the radio. Contrails crossed and tangled. Bader didn't chase the diver. He went up, straight into thinner air, forcing his Spitfire to work harder, forcing himself closer to the edge of mechanical tolerance. The German above him turned to meet the climb, confident in altitude advantage, unaware of the real imbalance. 5 seconds. 4. The G-force climbed again. The Spitfire strained. The German pilot tried to match the turn. 3. 2. At the last moment, the German hesitated, not enough to save himself, but enough to lose the fight. His aircraft drifted wide, aimless for a heartbeat that decided everything. Bader fired once. The Messerschmitt snapped apart, but the margin was gone now. A second German cut across Bader's nose, firing. Tracers tore past the cockpit. One hit the wing root. The aircraft lurched violently. Control stiffened. The Spitfire was wounded again. Bader rolled, forced another turn, slower now, heavier. His advantage still existed, but it was thinner, stretched by damage and time. The German pressed. This time, the enemy pilot didn't follow into the tightest part of the turn. He stayed just outside it, patient, disciplined, learning. For the first time that day, Bader felt the equation shift. Fuel was dropping. Control response dulled. The Germans were adapting. He broke downward, diving through cloud, vanishing into white. For several seconds, there was nothing. No horizon. No enemy. Just vibration and breath. When he emerged, he was alone again. The countdown had reset, but it was shorter now. And the sky was learning. The countdown had reset, but it was shorter now. And the sky was learning. The clouds thinned abruptly, as if torn open. Sunlight flooded the cockpit in a harsh white wash. Below, land replaced sea. Patchwork fields, hedgerows, roads like scars. England, but not safety. Bader checked 6. Too late. The German was already there, close, disciplined, no wasted motion. He hadn't chased blindly into the cloud. He had anticipated the exit. He had waited. This pilot was different. The Messerschmitt fired immediately. Tracers snapped past the canopy. One struck the tail. The Spitfire jolted, yawing hard. Warning lights flickered. Control response dulled further. This was no longer a contest of advantage. It was a countdown to failure. Bader didn't try to outrun him. He couldn't. He didn't try to climb away. The engine wouldn't hold it. Instead, he did the one thing the German least expected. He pulled. Not gently. Not gradually. He pulled until the aircraft screamed and the world compressed into force. 6 Gs. Then more. The Spitfire's wings flexed. The airframe groaned like a living thing being bent past its will. Any manual would have called it suicide. Any instructor would have called it terminal error. The German followed. For a second, it seemed he might succeed. His aircraft stayed tight. His aim held. Then biology intervened. The Messerschmitt faltered. Not mechanically, humanly. The pilot's vision collapsed inward, color draining to gray, then to nothing. His hands loosened just enough. The aircraft drifted. That fraction of a second was all Bader needed. He rolled inside the turn, crossed under the German's nose, and fired upward. The burst was brutal and final. The Messerschmitt disintegrated in midair, debris flaring in sunlight before tumbling down into fields that would never know the reason. Bader leveled out, heart steady, breath controlled. The Spitfire, however, was finished. The engine coughed violently now, power bleeding away. Smoke crept along the cowling. Oil pressure dropped toward zero. There would be no airfield this time. He scanned below quickly. A field. Narrow. Uneven. Better than trees. Better than fire. He lined up once, adjusted, then committed. The landing was violent. Gear collapsed instantly. The aircraft skidded, tore through hedges, spun once, then stopped with a sound like something breaking its neck. Silence. Bader sat still for a moment, waiting to see if pain would arrive. It didn't. He unstrapped, forced the canopy open, and climbed out awkwardly, falling hard into the grass. Above him, the sky was empty. The fight was over. Not because he was faster, not because he was stronger, but because physics had reached its limit before he did. The fight was over, not because he was faster, not because he was stronger, but because physics had reached its limit before he did. The field smelled of torn earth and fuel. Smoke drifted low, hesitant, as if unsure whether to linger. Bader lay on his back for several seconds, staring up at the empty blue where moments ago gravity and death had argued over his body. Then he moved, awkwardly, deliberately. Pain arrived late, dull and administrative, confined to shoulders and ribs. His prosthetic legs were twisted beneath him, one locked at the wrong angle. He reached down and corrected them with practiced motions. No panic, no wasted energy. Footsteps approached. Farm workers first, hesitant, keeping distance from the wreck. Then home guard. Rifles held without confidence. One of them recognized him. Word traveled fast, even without radios. Bader, someone said, not a question. He nodded once. The Spitfire burned quietly behind them, metal ticking as it cooled. It would not fly again. That didn't matter. Aircraft were tools. Time was the real currency. They helped him up. He waved off the stretcher, walked anyway. Back at the station, reports were written with clinical language that stripped the sky of its violence. Claims, probables, losses, damage. His name appeared beside numbers that barely hinted at what had happened. The medical officer checked him over, eyes lingering where legs should have been. No comment, no lecture. He signed the form. Later, alone for a moment, Bader sat on a bench and removed one prosthetic leg, then the other. The skin beneath was raw, chafed, angry. He didn't look at it for long. Across the channel, German intelligence officers read fragmented combat reports with growing irritation. The same phrase appeared again and again, stripped of context but heavy with implication. He does not black out. Some dismissed it as excuse-making. Others circled it in pencil. A few tried to solve it with training adjustments, altered tactics, stricter turn limits. None of it addressed the real problem. You couldn't train your way out of blood pooling where blood no longer was. Bader returned to operations quickly. Too quickly, some thought. He ignored them. The sky didn't wait for recovery. In the weeks that followed, the pattern repeated. Tight turns, German pilots braking early. Aces adapting, then dying anyway. His reputation hardened into something uncomfortable, even for his own side. Admiration edged with unease. He wasn't lucky. He was wrong in the best possible way. A man who violated assumptions without meaning to. Every sortie added to the tally. Over 20 victories confirmed, more unconfirmed. Numbers that mattered less than the effect they produced. German pilots stopped laughing when they heard his name. They stopped chasing too. But war is not generous. It does not allow advantages to remain pure. It waits. It shifts ground. It collects payment later. For Douglas Bader, that payment was still ahead. And it would come not from gravity but from the ground. War is not generous. It does not allow advantages to remain pure. It waits. It shifts ground. It collects payment later. For Douglas Bader, that payment was still ahead. It arrived not in a high G turn, but in a moment so ordinary it felt unfair. August 1941, over France. The sky was busy. Too busy. British fighters and German aircraft crossed paths in compressed airspace where seconds mattered more than skill. There was no elegant maneuver this time, no physiological edge to exploit. Just converging trajectories. Metal struck metal. The impact was violent, abrupt, final. The Spitfire lurched, controls tearing loose under his hands. The engine coughed once, then went dead. No recovery, no choice. Altitude bled away. Bader reached for the canopy release without hesitation. The routine was muscle memory now, as practiced as any combat drill. He rolled out, fell clear, counted the seconds, 1, 2, then felt the parachute snap him hard back into the world. The ground rose fast. He hit heavily, the air driven from his lungs in a dull, total silence. For a moment, he didn't move. Then the sounds returned. Wind, distant engines, boots on earth. Captured. The irony was complete. The man who had outlasted gravity was undone by traffic in the sky. The Germans knew exactly who they had. They treated him with a mixture of respect and suspicion, as if he were a machine they didn't fully understand. Interrogations followed. Polite questions. Tactical curiosity. How did he stay conscious? Bader gave them nothing. He joked. He deflected. He wasted their time. When that failed, he escaped. Or tried to. again and again. Each attempt more elaborate than the last, each failure confirming what they already knew. This man did not accept limits. Eventually, they removed the variable altogether. Colditz Castle. Stone walls replaced clouds. Corridors replaced airspace. But the pattern remained the same. Study the environment. Find the weakness. Apply pressure. Repeat. Bader attacked captivity the way he had attacked air combat. Not emotionally, not heroically, but methodically. He never flew again. The war moved forward without him. New aircraft, new pilots, new equations of speed and altitude. But the story followed. Among RAF pilots, it hardened into doctrine. Human limits were assumptions, not laws. Physiology could decide fights before tactics ever began. The body itself was part of the battlefield. Among German pilots, it became something darker. A warning passed quietly between squadrons. That once, there had been an Englishman who could stay awake longer than they could, who could follow the turn past the point where vision failed, who would still be aiming when they were already gone. After the war, Douglas Bader returned to civilian life unchanged in posture, if not in circumstance. He rejected sentiment, rejected myth. When asked about courage or destiny, he dismissed the language entirely. "I had an advantage," he said. "I used it." Nothing more. No speeches, no embellishment. In the end, Douglas Bader proved that amputees can still fly. Not through inspiration, not through miracle, but through a colder truth the war had revealed again and again. Limits are often assumptions, and the most dangerous man in the sky is the one who breaks them without trying to.